Day 2 of Prime Minister Modi's visit to Australia. Yesterday, the mega reception captured the headlines. Today, the leaders got down to business. Prime Ministers Albanese and Modi held talks. Now, usually, bilateral talks are a mundane affair, largely about diplomatic statements and bilateral agreements. But today was different. Today, we have significant outcomes to report. The first big takeaway is this: Prime Minister Modi's strong message on separatism, the pro-Khalistan elements and the attacks on Indian temples in Australia. In recent months, we witnessed a spate of such incidents. Hindu temples across Australia have been vandalized. Since January, at least 4 Hindu temples have been attacked. And who was behind them? Khalistani separatists, groups and individuals who want to divide India, who want a separate country for Sikhs carved out of the Indian state of Punjab. The Khalistan movement has been a violent one. It's been outlawed in India, but it has taken root in the West, mostly in countries like Canada, the UK, the US, and now Australia. In a lot of these cases, separatists operate with the backing of Pakistan. They're funded and supported by forces who want to hurt India. And New Delhi sees these overseas Khalistanis as a clear national security challenge. So India has reacted sharply to attacks on its diplomatic missions and Hindu temples. It has demanded swift action against the perpetrators. It has asked governments to crack down on them. Prime Minister Modi raised the issue again today with his Australian counterpart.
ऑस्ट्रेलिया में मंदिरों पर होने वाले हमलों और अलगाववादी तत्वों की गतिविधियों के संबंध में हमने पहले भी बात की थी और आज भी हमने बात की है। भारत और ऑस्ट्रेलिया के सौहार्दपूर्ण रिश्तों को कोई भी तत्व अपने विचारों या अपने एक्शन से आघात पहुंचाए, ये हमें स्वीकार्य नहीं है।
It is important to act decisively and urgently. You see, the Indian community in Australia is growing, especially the Sikh community. In 2016, there were 130,000 Sikhs in Australia. 5 years later, in 2021, that number shot up to 210,000. India fears that this community is vulnerable. If separatists are allowed to operate freely, they will target the Sikh community. They will exploit these numbers to revive the Khalistan movement. Prime Minister Albanese of Australia has repeatedly given a personal assurance to check this. He has vowed to use every available resource to crack down on Khalistanis, and the fact that Indian Prime Minister Modi brought it up again shows how seriously New Delhi views this. So separatism was high on the agenda, but there was much more to the conversation today between the two leaders. The second big takeaway from today's meeting is a migration deal. India and Australia signed this deal today. It will significantly improve India's access to Australia. This deal will benefit students, graduates, academic researchers and business owners. How? By ensuring more visas and easier travel rules. Australia will create a new type of visa, a 3-month temporary visa exclusively for Indian nationals. This will be for people who want to visit Australia to see family members who are working or studying there. And that's not all. Business visas will now enable longer stay. Plus, there will be yet another type of visa for academics and specialists. All in all, easier access to Australia. The third major takeaway is on the security front. India and Australia are seeking more synergy. They have a common security challenge called China. Through military and diplomatic moves, the Communist Party of China has threatened the security of both India and Australia, even challenged their sovereignty. Now, this issue was supposed to come up during the Quad summit. The Quad, as you would know, is a multilateral grouping with 4 members: India, Australia, the United States and Japan. Their leaders were supposed to meet in Sydney today. But Biden changed his plans at the last moment and the summit had to be called off. So Modi and Albanese took up some of the Quad agenda in today's meeting. They recognized the threat from China without naming it, and they reaffirmed their commitment to protecting the Indo-Pacific.
Quad leaders stand together for an open, stable, secure and prosperous Indo-Pacific region. A region where sovereignty is respected and all countries, large and small, benefit from a regional balance that keeps the peace.
So those were the important takeaways. They also discussed cooperation on mining and critical minerals. There's talk of an Australia-India green hydrogen task force, plus a trade deal. They're close to signing one. It could happen by the end of this year. And all of this shows how India's relationship with Australia is evolving. Prime Minister Modi described it best.
पिछले एक साल में यह हमारी छठी मुलाकात है। अगर क्रिकेट की भाषा में मैं कहूं तो हमारे संबंध T20 मोड में आ गए हैं।
Our ties have entered the T20 mode, he said, meaning just like a fast-paced T20 game, bold and rapid changes are being made to redefine the India-Australia relationship. It's whale hunting season in the Faroe Islands and the pictures are traumatizing. Take a look. Dozens of dead whales are scattered on the beach. The sea is red with blood. But the people are having a good time. What's the story here? First, some background. Faroe Islands is located in the North Atlantic Ocean. It's between Iceland and Norway. The islands are self-governing, but they belong to Denmark. It's a weird situation. Faroe Islands has a tradition of hunting whales. It's an annual event. The locals come together and set out on boats. They surround the dolphins or whales by creating a semicircle, sort of like a wall of boats. Then they gradually push those mammals onto the shore. Once they're beached, they're slaughtered. This month, 2 hunts have been organized. Around 60 whales have been killed so far. You can see why it's controversial. The hunt is primitive, violent, and bloody. Let me tell you what happened in 2021. The hunters spotted a superpod, basically a very large group of whales. That's a superpod. As it turned out, there were 1,428 of them. The whales were boxed in using jet skis and speedboats. All of them were killed. Can you imagine that? More than 1,400 whales killed in a single hunt. Even the government criticized it. They said, quote unquote, aspects of the catch were not satisfactory. I don't know what catch they were talking about. 1,400 kills is not a catch, it's a massacre. So why is the Faroe Islands still doing it? For tradition, they say. Whale hunt dates back to the Vikings. The locals overwhelmingly support it. They say it's part of the culture and the meat is part of their diet. Well, maybe so. But what about the brutality? New laws ban guns and harpoons at sea. So these whales are killed using blades and spikes. Surely the brutality is not part of the culture. The European Union has already outlawed the hunting of pilot whales. But Faroe Islands is self-ruled. EU rules do not apply there. So the hunt continues without any checks. Last year, the local government agreed to limit the kills to 500. But how do you even implement that? How will hunters know which kill is the 500th? It's a piecemeal reform meant to distract. Whales are highly intelligent creatures, but in the last century, they were hunted indiscriminately. Around 3 million whales were killed. The United States led the way. They needed whale blubber as lubricant. In fact, whaling was the 5th largest US industry back then. But in 1986, whaling was banned. Most countries agreed except 3, Japan, Norway, and Iceland. They've killed over 40,000 whales since then. Iceland is having second thoughts. They have promised to stop whaling by 2024, but Japan and Norway still do it. So does Faroe Islands. And I get that culture is very dear to all of us, but at what cost? Does the slaughter of innocent mammals count as culture? And if it does, is that the culture we want the next generation to inherit? And there is no financial angle to this issue. The average salary in Faroe Islands is $60,000 per year. That's 48 lakh rupees, average salary. In Japan, it's $45,000, which translates to 36 lakh rupees. They don't really need whale money to survive, so the question is only of culture. And how do we tackle it? This is a problem that many countries face. Even in India, we have seen traditions being questioned or animal rights groups asking for bans. The truth is, there is no blanket solution. Every cultural practice is different. Every belief is different. The only solution is to take a case-by-case approach. In Faroe Islands, the verdict is clear. The hunt is brutal and unsustainable. You can't use culture to hide your bloodlust. And now it's time for Vantage shots, images that tell the story. We're starting with Bolivia. The country's parliament turned into a wrestling ring. Lawmakers were discussing the imprisonment of a conservative governor, One thing led to another, and lawmakers started throwing punches and pulling each other's hair. In the US, a cowboy chased a runaway cow on a highway in Michigan. And after Met Gala, here is Pet Gala, dogs and cats walking the red carpet in New York. And mind you, these are no ordinary pets. They're all Instagram stars. Finally, what makes the 24th of May significant? We're taking you back in history. On this day, in the year 2000, Israel withdrew from Lebanon. As the last troops pulled out of southern Lebanon, it ended 18 years of occupation. The 1982 Lebanon War is often referred to as Israel's Vietnam. We're leaving you with that. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.
You love your outfit?
A lot of my shows as well. Jared Leto surprised everybody. There was a lot of voice.
Email exchanges from inside the BBC, they talk about the risk of violating Indian laws. It's easier to rake up the freedom of speech debate, but does it give anyone a free pass to knowingly violate the law? America supports India because it needs India's support in return. And India is working with the US because it suits India's interests. This is how geopolitics works. Last night, he diffused a crisis with his defense minister. But today, Netanyahu was confronted with a new problem. His cabinet seems to have rebelled against him. The UK is looking at the Indian subcontinent to fill its coffers. That India seems to be negotiating from a position of power, like a partner and not a former colony. The US and Russia are dangerously close to an armed conflict. This year, 2023, New Delhi will be the capital of global diplomacy. For a country as diverse as ours, with 88% of the population illiterate, it was a very big deal to write a constitution, and that too, the world's largest. Meanwhile, if we may, here's a Republic Day gift from India for the BBC. A list of suggestions for the BBC for their upcoming documentaries. Number 1, the Kohinoor and the colonial loot. Number 2, an outdated monarchy and unhealthy obsession with the royals. Number 3, racism in 2023. We're waiting.